It is now, when we are called as witnesses of the world, to mend it, to change its course, to restore it. It is now when we are called to act on our values, not to hide, not to fear, but to be bold and loud. It is now that we are called to continue our fight for justice, to organize, to speak up. It is now. Let us gather. Let us give each other courage. Let us worship.
Good morning and welcome to the First Unitarian Universalist Church of San Diego, where we worship each Sunday in the South Bay, in Hillcrest, and online.
Buenos días y bienvenidos a la primera Iglesia Unitaria Universalista de San Diego, donde adoramos cada domingo en South Bay, en Hillcrest y en línea.
I am Tonya Vianello, and I use the pronouns she and her. A special welcome to those of you who are here for the first time. Please fill out the welcome card in the order of service.
Me llamo Marta y uso el pronombre ella. Una bienvenida muy especial a todos que están con nosotros por primera vez. Les extendemos la invitación de llenar el formulario en el orden de servicio.
Our community is a vital, diverse, multi-generational congregation without borders, with a mission to create community, nurture spiritual growth, and act on values to help heal the world.
Somos una congregación compuesta de personas de distintas identidades racializadas y culturas, personas de diversas orientaciones sexuales e identidades de género, personas de varias habilidades mentales y físicas.
We are creators of community and compassion, and though we can fall short, we're committed to practicing an affirming welcome to all.
Con espíritu de reverencia reconocemos que nos juntamos esta mañana en la tierra de los Kumeyaay, quienes continúan viviendo en todo su territorio. Al emprender este viaje juntos, mantengamos en nuestros corazones y mentes el pueblo Kumeyaay.
In a spirit of reverence, we acknowledge that we gather this morning on the land of the Kumeyaay, who continue to live throughout their territories. May the light of this candle shine for our commitment to the Kumeyaay people and to justice and equity for Indigenous people everywhere.
Now, please rise in body or spirit and join us singing the church hymn.
There we go. Good morning, friends. I'd like to invite any of the children or youth who would like to come up and join me for our Time for All Ages story. Good morning. Oh, they're pirates. Do you know a pirate's favorite letter? Yeah. You'd think it would be R, but alas, it is the C. Ba-dum-bum. Good morning. Hi. Good morning. And now for something completely different, friends. So, you know, tomorrow is Martin Luther King Day, and today we're hearing about people in the civil rights movement who we don't necessarily hear about by name a lot. And our story today, though, is about Martin Luther King, and it's about his famous speech. Does anybody know the name of probably his most famous speech? Anybody heard that name? The I Have a Dream speech. And what I like about this is it's a story about the speech that I didn't know. I didn't know this sort of background of the story. And one thing I think you need to know to understand it, sometimes when we're writing a speech or a sermon or a talk, the ending, the big ending of the place where we're going in the speech, we call that the landing place or the place to land. And so that's the title of our story today, A Place to Land. Martin Luther King was once asked if the hardest part of preaching was knowing where to begin. No, he said, the hardest part is knowing where to end. It's terrible to be circling up there without a place to land. But on August 27th, the night before the 1963 March on Washington, Martin wasn't sure what to say or how to say it. So he did what great people do. He asked for help. You have to preach, said Reverend Ralph Abernathy. Most folks are coming tomorrow to hear you preach. Wyatt T. Walker agreed, but added, don't use those lines about I have a dream. You've used it too many times. Bayard Rustin, who organized the march, agreed he wanted to hear about jobs, jobs, and more jobs, not about dreams or scripture. Clarence Jones, one of Martin's speechwriters, suggested a different metaphor, one that he hadn't used before, a bad check. They talked for 2 hours in the hotel lobby until finally Martin said, I'm going up to my room. I'll see you all tomorrow. Up in his room, Martin made many rough drafts that he scribbled on yellow pads. As he wrote, he thought about others in the civil rights movement, heroes who had been chased by snarling police dogs, knocked off their feet by high-pressure hoses, arrested, beaten, or worse. At midnight, Martin was still writing and rewriting and rehearsing the lines out loud. Andrew Young, who counseled Martin throughout the night, said it was like writing poetry. Words crossed out 3 or 4 times, searching for the perfect meaning and rhythm. At 4 a.m., with a handwritten speech finished but not finished, Martin finally went to bed. At the same time, in Harlem, in New York City, in Chicago, and Philadelphia, and Cleveland, and Memphis, crowds on buses and trains, on foot and on planes, headed to Washington. At 8 a.m., the city woke with soldiers patrolling Constitution Avenue. By noon, women in flowing dresses and gentlemen in white shirts and snazzy hats, carrying protest signs and signs of hope, walked past the reflecting pool. 2:30 p.m., Martin kept refining, revising, and editing. About 3:30 p.m., introduced as the moral leader of our nation, Martin walked to the microphone. He removed the folded white sheet of paper from his pocket, the speech that he had typed up, and placed it on the podium. Beneath the marble statue of Abraham Lincoln, Martin spoke. He talked about the Constitution, the Declaration of Independence, the Emancipation Proclamation, and used words from Langston Hughes, the Bible, and spirituals he had learned as a child. The speech was good, the crowd applauded where it should, but Martin wanted more. Martin paused. Even he couldn't say why. And then a voice shouted, "Tell him about the dream, Martin." It was Mahalia Jackson, the Queen of Gospel, who was sitting near the podium. She shouted again, "Tell him about the dream, Martin. Tell him about the dream." Martin, a Baptist preacher, the son and grandson of Baptist preachers, carefully moved the script off to the side. Martin was done circling. The lecture was over, and he was going to church, his place to land, and taking a congregation of 250,000 along for the ride. 4 words, spoken so many times in Chicago, Detroit, Birmingham, and Albany, but never intended to be heard on this day, not even written down for this day. Nowhere in the written speech, not even once, "I have a dream." These were the words he risked his life for and spent time in jail for and walked arm in arm for. Martin's voice soared with words that Mahalia Jackson had sung, "My country, 'tis of thee, let freedom ring," until they concluded with a mighty crescendo. Free at last, thank God Almighty, we are free at last. Everyone knew that more work lay ahead, more late-night meetings, more marches, more bridges to cross. And those battles continue to be fought, but that day brought hope and joy. Martin had stepped up to the podium and stepped down on the other side of history. He had found his place to land. Well, thank you. That's a good book, wasn't it? You have to thank Reverend Kristen for finding that one. So I hope you enjoyed the story, friends, and I hope it let you to learn a little something new about that famous speech. And now, those of us up here, I'm going to invite us to stand up and lead the congregation in our affirmation, because I need help with your hands. And we'll say it first in English and then in Spanish. We are Unitarian Universalists, a people of open minds, loving hearts, and welcoming hands. Somos unitarios, universalistas, personas de mentes abiertas, corazones amorosos, y manos que dan la bienvenida. And now I invite all the children and youth who would like to join me and their other leaders out on the patio. We'll head to our religious education groups.
Let us just breathe together as we listen to the wonderful sound of children moving into their classrooms. Beloveds, we pause at this time in our service to honor the memory of Rhiannon Cantwell Smith, who died on Wednesday, December 25th, at the age of 35, with her loved ones by her side. Rhiannon's death was a direct result of her relationship to alcohol, and that adds to our sorrow. Rhiannon was born in Rhode Island, where she learned to love the ocean. She attended college in Boston at Northeastern University, graduating in 2012. And then in 2013, she moved here to San Diego, which quickly became home. She found her spiritual home here at First UU San Diego, where from a diverse religious background, she could explore her own spiritual identity. She jumped right into life here at First UU. She was a jumper-inner. She sang in the women's choir. She found her people in the young adult group. She was a leader. elected as president of our board of trustees before she was 30. Rhiannon was our youngest board president ever. Rhiannon was also active in DRUM, a UU organization for religious leaders of color. She loved music, and she loved her family, both those she was related to and those she met later on and happily claimed as family. Her loss leaves a terrible ache in our hearts, and we offer our love and care to her beloveds, many of whom are here visiting with us this morning. Her cousins Asha and Maya, who were really her sisters, her mother Aislinn, her father Anand, her uncle Kevin, her godmother Leanne, and countless friends and family who loved her. We light this candle in Rhiannon's honor and memory. And to mark the weightiness of her loss, we extinguish the flame of our chalice, symbol of our gathered community, because our company is diminished by the loss of her. Yet the light of this community continues, and Rhiannon's spirit lives on in the many among us who loved her and will remember her. So from her candle, we relight our chalice. The community of memory and hope shines on, and Rhiannon lives on among us in the heart's long memory. In mystery we are born, in mystery we live, and in mystery we die.
Good morning. Thanks for being here. Let me first express just my own gratitude to all of the volunteers of the lay ministry team who contribute their time and talents to support our congregation. I believe Aaron Thurston, are you in the office? There you go. We have lay ministers available to listen to cares and concerns that you may have after the service. You can find them with those colorful scarves that they wear.
Also Marianne Harper.
And Marianne Harper, thank you. 2 for 1 today. Our cup runneth over. An important issue that I'd like to raise your awareness about is that we'll be meeting next Sunday, January 26th, for our mid-year congregational meeting. We'll have a brief financial update and quickly review some other business. But the meat of the matter will be on our sustainable future. More specifically, to continue our discussion and discernment about what we will do with this campus. Will we stay, go somewhere else, find a partner who might develop some of this property, and make a space for us to use in that redevelopment, so that we can bring our future facilities in line with our anticipated budgets and annual costs. The meeting will be here in the Meeting House at 11:45, following worship and a light lunch. The meeting will be live streamed for those participating online, and folks will be able to ask questions via chat on YouTube. Please join us. Childcare will be provided, and the meeting will end by 2 o'clock in the afternoon. Each week in worship, we share our offering with an organization that shares our Unitarian Universalist values. In the month of January, our generosity offerings go to organizations within our Unitarian Universalist Association. And this week is part of our function towards a journey toward wholeness. Creating the beloved community that Martin Luther King Jr. dreamed of requires intentional effort and action at every level of the organization. Journey Toward Wholeness is a nationwide Unitarian Universalist Association's initiative. And as such, it's supported at various levels of our congregation's attempts to become anti-racist and anti-oppression. At First UU San Diego, Journey Toward Wholeness, your committee here, focuses on dismantling racism, eradicating oppression, and bringing about transformation through increased awareness. We will be gratefully receiving the generosity offering this morning on behalf of DRUM, the Diverse and Revolutionary Unitarian Universalist Multicultural Ministries. It's a nationwide effort, self-organized and created to support leaders, ministers, and educators and members of color in the Unitarian Universalist community to combat racism through overcoming racism through resistance, collective empowerment of one another, and to transform Unitarian Universalism through multicultural experiences. Our beloved Rhiannon was an active member in DRUM, and so I hope you'll keep her memory in mind as you consider donating today to support DRUM. I'll also point out, we're calling this a generosity offering, but I would like to note that this is also an investment. This is an investment in professionals of color who will be the future leaders of our Unitarian Universalist Association going into the future. So it's an important way for us locally to support something that's important nationally. You may donate this morning in person by credit card or ATM with those funny little things that we call dip jars, even though they're not jars. Or you can use cash or check in the collection boxes. If you have difficulty or need assistance, please raise your hand and one of our congregants will assist as best we can. You can also donate online at our church's website, firstuusandiego.org. Thank you for your generosity. This morning's offering will now be gratefully received.
None of us is just one thing. That's a lesson I need to be reminded of, especially when I learn some terrible thing about a hero of mine, or when I hear one more bad thing about someone I really dislike. The life of Bayard Rustin is a good example of this bit of wisdom. Rustin was one of the most impactful but lesser-known leaders of progressive movements in the 20th century. He was a major influence on the civil rights, labor, socialist, LGBTQ, and nonviolence movements. From the 30s till his death in 1987, he, more than most of us, was more than one thing. Bayard Rustin was born in 1912 and raised by grandparents in Philadelphia. He attended both Quaker meetings and African Methodist Episcopal churches, but he was most influenced by his Quaker grandmother's belief in nonviolence. His grandmother was an NAACP member and hosted many racial justice leaders, including W.E.B. Du Bois. Young Bernard did not display traditional academic talent. He attended several colleges on music scholarships, but did not graduate. His organizational skills were demonstrated early on when he was kicked out of his first school for organizing a strike. But the excellent tenor voice that got him those music scholarships served him well later in life. He appeared in a Broadway play and recorded several record albums. Rustin was a leader both as a theorist and strategist, and also as an on-the-ground organizer. He was a major influence that led to the adoption of nonviolent direct action by Martin Luther King and the Civil Rights Movement. Rustin provided MLK with a deep understanding of nonviolent ideas and tactics at a time when King had only an academic familiarity with Gandhi. He organized King's trip to India, where King met and had significant conversations with several theorists and practitioners of nonviolent direct action. Rustin served as King's proofreader, ghostwriter, philosophy teacher, and nonviolence strategist. MLK recognized the advantages of Rustin's knowledge, contacts, and organizational abilities, asking him to serve as an advisor. But he was well aware that Rustin's background would be controversial in the eyes of other civil rights leaders. Bayard Rustin's background was that he was a gay man in movements led by Christian clergy in the middle 20th century. Another aspect of Rustin's background was his membership in the Young Communist League in the 1930s, when racial equality was a major focus of Communist Party organizing. But when Hitler invaded the Soviet Union in 1941, the party dropped its push for equality and Rustin resigned. Although in his private life he was unashamedly out as gay and socialist, he was content with leading from behind the scenes of the civil rights movement. This is the reason many of us have not been aware of Bayard Rustin until today. Rustin was also a prolific organizer of marches and other nonviolent protests. Here's a partial list. A 1941 proposed march on Washington, the threat of which helped convince Roosevelt to ban discrimination in defense industries and federal agencies. The first Freedom Ride in 1946 to test the Supreme Court ruling banning discrimination in interstate travel. The 1956 Montgomery bus boycott. 1957 prayer pilgrimage for freedom. The 1958 and 59 youth marches for integrated schools. The 1964 New York school bus boycott. But of course, the most well-known is the 1963 March on Washington for Jobs and Freedom. which brought between 200,000 and 300,000 people to hear Martin Luther King deliver his "I Have a Dream" speech. Just a note, there's a recent movie about Rustin's role in organizing this march. It's called Rustin, and it's available on Netflix. I recommend it. There's a lot to say about how this movement happened, but the short version is that the older civil rights leaders were initially not in favor of the march or of having Bayard Rustin be the lead organizer. Much discussion was had, which delayed the start of the organizing. It was finally agreed that the official chair would be A. Philip Rudolph, with Rustin as his assistant. But Rustin did the actual job of lead organizing, starting with only about 8 weeks before the march happened. One of the reasons for the reluctance to have any publicity about Rustin's role was his arrest 10 years earlier in Pasadena for having sex in a car with 2 other men. He served 60 days in jail. Another of Bayard's many times in jail was when he refused to cooperate with the draft system in World War II. Later in his life, Rustin adopted some neoconservative beliefs, opposing affirmative action quotas and Black studies programs. This earned him fierce criticism from other activists and also posthumous praise from Ronald Reagan. But also, after his death, Rustin was presented with the Presidential Medal of Freedom medal by Barack Obama. So, Bayard Rustin was not only an unsung civil rights hero. He wasn't only a gay man. He wasn't only MLK's instructor in nonviolence. He wasn't only a draft dodger. He wasn't only a great singer. He wasn't only a public intellectual. He wasn't only a neoconservative. He was all those things. He was a complicated human being who lived his beliefs and grew and learned along the way. Someone to admire.
Thank you, Steve, so much for that reflection. And as the choir is making their way up, I have a request. If you wear hearing aids, go like this. If they are not firmly in your ear, that's probably what's causing that feedback. Does that sound like that could be the problem? Yes. So if you would just make sure that your hearing aids are firmly in your ear, then that should reduce that interference. Thank you.
There's a voice loud and clear, rising up far and near. Let justice roll down, let justice roll down. Like a rush of a stream comes a powerful dream. Let justice roll down. Justice roll down. Every soul be reformed.
Good morning. Ever since the election in early November, I've been thinking about what I can do to help those who will be most negatively affected by the incoming administration, how I can make my outrage and opposition heard. The truth is there's not a lot I can do because I don't hold much power in this country. But there are ways to act locally, both within this community and outside of it. There are ways, if we're so inclined, to make a difference in the lives of those who may not be facing disaster or long, difficult battles. When I reflect on Martin Luther King Jr., I recognize that he was a highly gifted man. He was a man with a vision and with a voice. He was the public leader of nonviolent protests in the 1950s and 1960s. More than once, he was jailed for his actions. He developed the authority to speak strongly and persuasively to and on behalf of Black Americans, most famously in his speech, "I Have a Dream," at the 1963 March on Washington for Jobs and Freedom. The most obvious victories of the civil rights movement came in the form of the government's passage of the Civil Rights Act of 1964 and the Voting Rights Act of 1965. What might have been achieved had he not been assassinated in 1968, we will never know. But even though we celebrate him now with an annual federal holiday, he didn't create the civil rights movement on his own. There were brave people who preceded him, doing what they could to free themselves from the oppression of Jim Crow laws. And there were many who helped build the civil rights effort into what we remember today. People who volunteered their time and skills to bring crowds to King's speeches and demonstrations, to cook meals for the organizers, to find housing for protesters who came from other places, to write press releases, to make phone calls, to give trainings to nonviolent civil disobedience, and more. The vast majority of those people will never be known, never be acknowledged beyond their own families. Pauli Murray is one of the names that you might know in connection with civil rights. You might even know that she was a Black civil rights lawyer. She was also an activist, an author, a feminist, a scholar, and later in life, a minister. She broke a number of barriers stemming from her race and her gender. The civil rights movement itself was blatantly sexist and homophobic, as we've seen from the life of Bayard Rustin. Although Pauli Murray never called herself a lesbian, she had several relationships with women, including a life partner. Even more interesting, today she would be considered non-binary or transgender. She struggled throughout her life with her own gender identification, at different times dressing like a boy, calling herself he/she, and unsuccessfully asking a doctor to prescribe testosterone. The Pauli Murray Center for History and Justice, as well as contemporary scholars, refer to Murray as they. A quick biography. Pauli Murray was born in 1910, orphaned early, and raised by an aunt in North Carolina. At age 16, she moved to New York City, where she graduated from Hunter College in 1933. When she was 30, she and a friend sat in the whites-only section of a Virginia bus and were arrested, 15 years before Rosa Parks did the same thing in Alabama. She applied to the graduate program in sociology at the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill in 1938, hoping that recent legal decisions would help her case. She was rejected because of her race. Murray graduated in 1944 from the law school at Howard University, an all-Black school, or, as we say now, an HBCU. She was the only woman in her class. As she said, they didn't even let me talk. She also graduated first in her class. She applied to Harvard University to continue her postgraduate work, but was rejected because of her gender. Based on her experiences, she coined the term Jane Crow to call out the impact of gender oppression on Black women beyond the Jim Crow laws that enforced racial segregation in the South. Finally, in 1965, she became the first African American to receive a Doctor of Juridical Science degree from Yale Law School. And that's not all. As a lawyer, Murray argued for civil rights, women's rights, and labor rights. Among her many accomplishments, President Kennedy appointed her to serve on the 1961 to 1963 Presidential Commission on the Status of Women. She influenced Thurgood Marshall and Ruth Bader Ginsburg with her legal scholarship, helping them to shape arguments they made in front of the Supreme Court and won. In 1966, she co-founded the National Organization for Women. She published legal scholarship, 2 autobiographies, and a book of poetry. Murray eventually left her tenured position as a history professor at Brandeis University and became the first Black woman to be ordained as an Episcopal minister in 1977. Her sermons and speeches have been collected and were published in 2023. Pauli Murray died in 1985 at the age of 75 of pancreatic cancer. There's a quotation by Martin Luther King Jr. that I try to internalize. Our lives begin to end the day we become silent about things that matter. Pauli Murray was someone who did not keep silent. She was a trailblazer who played a pivotal role in the civil rights and women's movements. As she said herself, "My whole history has been a struggle in a society dominated by the ideas that Blacks were inferior to whites and women were inferior to men." She should be included in every history class that teaches the struggles of the mid to late 20th century. More recently, there has been enormous backlash to the ideas and the legal rights that those movements produced. Who ever thought, for instance, that Roe versus Wade, a 1973 landmark decision which finally made abortion legal, would be overturned 50 years later in 2022? Tomorrow, ironically, this country will celebrate the memory of Martin Luther King Jr. and all that he represents at the same time as we will witness the inauguration of a returning president who is, among other things, a blatant misogynist and racist. So it comforts me to remember that the civil rights movement was the work of so many people, the majority of whom were anonymous and forgotten, all of whom offered what they could. Pauli Murray pointed out that we are all the beneficiaries of those who labored and hoped but did not live to see the realization of their dreams. We may not either, but I think it's important to envision the future we want to live in and to do what we can, whatever that is, to move forward toward it. Not least by renewing and maintaining community to turn to in sorrow and anger, to unite with in resistance to the injustices that are likely to come, to gather together with the objective of conservation or restoration, or even the creation of something new. Thank you.
Now please rise in body spirit and sing with us the closing hymn.
Both our opening words and closing words today are by the Reverend Tanya Marquez. Do not fear agitation, for agitation is the rhythm of life itself to be put into motion, to be stirred. Do not fear the movements that decenter what you always thought permanent. You carry within the center of your understanding the compass to show you the way. Carry with you the love that will hold you, the vision that will guide you, and the relationships to all beings and the world that will ground you. Go in peace and gentle agitation to stir the world to the side of love. Thank you.
Hello to all my friends here. Hello to all my friends here at First United Unitarian. It's so wonderful to be back here. Reverend Justine and Thomas Acosta, I would like to thank you for inviting me to share this glorious day, Dr. Martin Luther King Day, with you. It is my honor and my privilege to stand in your presence, to sing a very historic song that carries such deep meaning for me as an African American. Lift Every Voice and Sing was written in the 1900s for African Americans and became our national anthem. This song started as a poem by James Weldon Johnson and expressed the American Negro's journey historically and spiritually. As a poem, it was first recited by 500 school children at the all-black Edwin M. Stanton School in Jacksonville, Florida, as a tribute to Abraham Lincoln's birthday. James Weldon Johnson's brother, John Rosen Johnson, then put the song to a poem. And then around 2 decades later, in 1919, the NAACP adopted this song as the Negro National Anthem to tell the African American story of struggle, triumph, and freedom. James Weldon Johnson meant this song to be a song of victory. Victory because every pain and hardship and trial that we went through was not wasted, but rather it molded and shaped us to become a better, stronger, and higher version of our true selves and experience our true nature, which is love. Every one of us goes through pain, hardships, and personal trials, but they're never wasted. When we allow them to break any shell of hardness of heart that we may have acquired and transform us into a loving and forgiving people. Love is the victory, because love never fails. So I chose to sing this song using a performance track, and it'll give you a flavor of what this song would sound like in a typical African American church or organization back in the day and also today. As is the tradition in African American churches and organizations, and in honor of Dr. Martin Luther King Day, if you're able, would you kindly rise for the singing of the Negro National Anthem? Thank you. Till earth and heaven rings, Let our rejoicing rise high as the listening skies. Let it resound far as a rolling sea. Sing a song full of the faith that the dark past has taught us. Sing a song full of the hope that the present has brought us. Facing the rising sun of a new day begun. Let us march on till victory is won. Stony the road we trod, bitter the chastening rod, felt in the days when hope unborn had died, yet with a steady beat have not our weary feet come to the place for which our fathers sighed. We have come over a way that with tears has been watered. We have come treading our path through the blood of the slaughtered. Out of the gloomy past till now we stand at last, where the bright gleam of our bright star is cast. God of our weary years, God of our silent tears, thou who hast brought us thus far on the way, thou who hast by thy might led us into the light. Keep us forever in the path we pray. Lest our feet stray from the places, our God, where we met thee. Lest our hearts, drunk with the wine of the world, we forget